Hi there. Welcome to The PrevenTable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got some royalty with me today. The Princess of Prevention, otherwise known as Harriet Kopolow, is in the building. Welcome, Harriet.
Thank you, Nicole.
First of all, I still cannot believe you said yes.
I can't either.
So for those maybe 3 people out there who don't know, Harriet Kopolow is the reason that our name is Prevent+Ed. Why does that matter? Because we wouldn't be doing prevention education if it weren't for you. And I mean that. You started it, right?
Well, there were other people involved. It wasn't just me.
Okay, so let's go back to 1980.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're going back.
We're going 40 years,
yeah,
right?
We're going back to 1980. You're teaching at WashU.
Yes.
You're teaching teachers how to teach.
Yes.
And you see a job opening in the paper
Exactly.
that says
Alcohol educator.
And you thought,
I did not want to stay at what I was doing, and I wanted to do a job that had education as part of it, but I didn't want to go back to the classroom. I had little kids at the time, and I thought, it's a lot of work to teach. Most people think it's 9 to 3 and you're off, but it's a 24/7 job. It's a very, very hard job. And with little kids, I just didn't want to do it. So I was looking in the paper at that time for any job that said educator. And this said alcohol educator, so I investigated it.
and my understanding, or at least as lore has it, that at the time there were lots of grant dollars available for something called drug prevention, but nobody really knew what that meant, right? And so when you looked at the opportunity and when you were offered the job, Ed Tash, who was the executive director at the time, said, I need you to figure it out.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So when you're first tapped with figuring this out, what did prevention mean at the time? Did you even know what it meant? Where did you start?
I had no idea what prevention meant. I was hired under a United Way grant that said I was supposed to educate youth and minorities. And I was just fine with education, but I had no idea what prevention was.
Right.
So I started looking around, and there was an organization that had a curriculum. And I thought, okay, I don't need a job. Then I went and looked at the curriculum, and I thought, I need a job.
Because the curriculum was pretty terrible.
It was, right. And it didn't really teach anything. It was a lot of just fun activities, but there was no teaching or education involved. So that was how I started thinking about it. I still didn't know what prevention was, and frankly, no one else did.
No one did, right.
So,
this was back in the Just Say No era. This is when there were a lot of scare tactics coming down, but not any sort of best practices that we know of today.
Nothing.
No sort of, no framework at that point, correct?
I remember when I was at WashU supervising student teachers, and I was in a 5th grade classroom, and I was watching a teacher teach drug education, and there was a film, and it said LSD, and it just came at the kids, and it was frightening.
In 5th grade?
In 5th grade.
Oh, okay.
It was frightening, and I'm thinking, I wouldn't like being a 5th grader and seeing that. That's not drug education. But yet I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
So, and there wasn't really any research or anything. So I just started thinking. And actually, I learned a lot from AA because as part
Alcoholics
of
Anonymous.
Alcoholics Anonymous, I had to go for training because I needed to learn about alcohol and drugs. It wasn't my background. So I used to go to AA meetings, which are wonderful.
And which we still require all new employees
Absolutely.
to attend.
And you have to go to an open AA meeting.
Yes.
So that they know you're not, in recovery or anything. But anyway, I learned a tremendous amount from these people. They were wonderful. And I learned that they were working on what are now called life skills. They were working on resiliency. They were working on coping. They were working on relationships. They were working on fellowship, on stress reduction, on how to deal with problems, on how to deal with people who, made them angry, anger management, bullying. That's what these meetings were about. And I used to say to my friends, these are so healthy. Why can't just everybody have a meeting like this to go to? So then I thought,
It's called group therapy. No.
Yes. Anyway, so I thought, well, if it's good enough for rehabilitation, maybe kids need to learn this. And a lot of parents already do this kind of thing. So what's the role of a prevention agency or a school? So I kind of had to think that through. And then at the beginning, there were a ton of programs because I wasn't at all focused. I was just trying to figure it out.
Right.
And then, we started writing lessons for first graders on friendship. And then I would have a school call me to do, anger management. So I'd have to put a lesson together. So then they kept calling back.
Right.
So I needed more than one lesson for the same class. But the interesting thing was that was elementary. High schools at the time, no one had a problem. Not one.
Oh, of course
high school.
not. No. Mm-mm.
And
we don't do drugs.
No,
Nope.
there was nothing.
Mm-mm.
Of course, kids were telling me different things. But,
Of course.
So one of the school, I had a program. I didn't even know what to do with high school kids at the time, but I had a program that I read about that sounded very interesting called Natural Helpers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a program where the whole school, at the same time, on the same day, takes used to be called a sociogram. There's two questions. One, who would you go to if you had a problem in this school, any grown-up, any kid? And that was the main question. Parkway School District was very interested. It was really the only one at the time. They had 4 high schools.
Yep.
So one day I, of course, met with the counselors, planned, etc., and we had a sociogram one day. And out of that sociogram, we came up with this was at one high school, Parkway North. We came up with about 50 kids whose names
they just kept
coming up.
populating.
That everybody, K through 9 through 12, this one. So I had a parent meeting. I explained to the parents what the weekend retreat was like, what the kids would be learning, what the expectations would be afterwards. And about, probably I would say about 30 kids signed up for the weekend. And the whole purpose of the Natural Helpers was for these kids, and they ended up from all different social groups, to talk to their friends who were having alcohol and drug problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it was information about alcohol and other drugs. It was also information about how do you talk to somebody without being, mean or angry or judgmental. Right. So that was what the weekend was about. Then the kids went back to school, and the counselor then, and at that point I did some helping, but the counselors mostly did it. And some had peer counseling sessions, or if they were worried about a kid, they would refer them to one of the Natural Helpers. Of course, the Natural Helpers group, being teenagers, didn't like the name, and they changed a lot of the names. But that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so that was one thing. And then we got into retreats and summer camps called Teen Institutes.
And at one point, Teen Institute was a statewide thing, and you were doing multiple of them.
Yes, it started in 1980, and we had,
by the way,
the first year.
You had no paid staff. You were relying on volunteers to do this, correct?
Yes, there was another.
Poke my eye out.
There was
It
another
sounds
man
terrible.
there who was really a starter at the very beginning.
Okay.
And then we had another person on staff that helped. But other than that, we had to get staff from the community.
So 3 paid staff with how many teenagers?
100 kids.
Okay.
The first year was 45.
Okay.
The second year it went up to 100 with a waiting list. And I think it was for 3 years we had a statewide program in Jefferson City. It might have been 5 years. And then we regionalized it so that the St.
RTI,
Louis area
correct?
became a regional teen institute. But we still had no staff. And we still had to depend on incredible volunteers from the community who would come for basically 5 days.
Yeah.
And then we
willingly.
Oh, yeah. And then we had a retreat, like in December, mid-year, for any kids that wanted to come back, like a little reunion. So we had to have staff for that too. But it was great. But we wanted the kids to do something.
Yes.
And the do something is how all the programs at PrevenTable,
PrevenTed, whatever.
evolved.
We'll always be NC88 too.
Yes,
It's fine.
To me, it's NC88, but
It's
that's
fine.
okay. But anyway, that's how
it evolved because
Yes.
you wanted them to do something.
Exactly.
So when they would say, well, we want to teach about alcohol, that's where Tripod came. Or we want to teach about conflict resolution, that's where conflict mediation came. Things like that.
Exactly.
Correct?
The first one was what we call High Step, High School Taught Education Program.
We still do it to this
I know
day.
you
If you're
do.
listening and interested,
I know
hit
you
us
do.
up.
And we came back from
And it's where high schoolers teach some character ed or life skills lessons at the elementary level.
or the middle school
Or the
level.
middle school level, yes.
It started at 7th grade because I had 19 high schools one year that had come either to the Teen Institute or our smaller retreat called Perspectives. And they wanted to do something. And to a kid mostly, and we're talking maybe 100 kids, they wanted to talk to 7th graders.
Because
So,
for them was 7th grade the
key year.
age, yeah.
A key year for
Because it's
starting.
13, right?
Right.
And data shows us that 12, the age of 12 in the state of Missouri is the age that a kid is going to start experimenting if they're going to start, right? That 12
Right.
is the age.
And the earlier, the higher the risk.
Exactly.
And so these kids then had seen kids that had started 7th grade, and by the time they were in 10th grade, they were in trouble.
Yeah. It's like when you go to middle school and then you leave middle school with a whole new set of friends,
Right,
for better or worse.
right.
That was smart of them to pick 7th
Very
grade.
smart. But there were no lessons.
Yeah, I was going to say, then you needed a curricula.
So I needed to get busy and create one lesson for 7th
By the way,
graders.
Harriet
And
wrote most of, yes, I mean, we've adapted it over the years.
Okay.
But the 30 programs that we do right now, with 2 exceptions, I think, 3 exceptions, were written by you,
Mhm.
and we've adapted them.
Mhm.
You wrote a lot.
Mhm.
Because then, oh, by the way, you were also writing grants
Mhm. Well,
to fund the stuff. Because you had to, by the way, if you're listening, Harriet hates when people talk about her or gives her compliments. So this is the portion of the podcast where she's like dying inside. But you essentially went from one staff person to, by the time you retired, we had 25 prevention educators and a budget in prevention of like $2.5 million.
that's good.
You grew that. That's nuts.
Yeah, well, don't look at me. The way you grow a program,
Yes. How do you grow a program?
okay, you grow a program, and growth is hard, okay? But you grow a program by having a good product,
Yes.
okay? Having a board that trusts you
True.
and works for you, and having a good reputation in the community, because then you have a lot of support. So, maybe I wrote grants, but I don't think we would have ever gotten the program had the staff not been so wonderful. And we had evaluation data. We had a lot of growth among kids. So I feel like I was part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You facilitated
Well,
the growth.
Well, in a way, yeah, but the growth had to happen from
Of course.
a lot of different people.
Of course.
Right.
I would say that, and this is not an exaggeration,
Okay.
I would say that probably 90%
Mhm.
of how I lead
Mm-hmm.
has come from you, because you told me when I was learning how to do your job as director of prevention. You had 25 staff, all very different people. You knew things about people. You treated them like human beings. You still wrote grants. You came in early. You left late. But you told me that you used to be in the classroom, Nicole, and those 25 students, that's who you paid attention to. And as you'll be successful, Nicole, as long as you treat your staff with the same attention and compassion that you treated your students. So you basically said, they're just bigger kids. Like, treat them like big kids.
Yeah, tall 4-year-olds.
Exactly.
Well,
But that has really stuck with me because I individualize based on what each person needs. And I don't think that's something that it's not a leadership style that is taught. I learned it from you. And I appreciate that because it's helped me figure out how to lead prevention, but then also how to lead an organization.
thank you.
You're welcome. I got you to accept a compliment.
But the reality is, everybody says, the kids are the most important. But for a manager of a program, the staff is the most important.
Absolutely.
Because you cannot do anything with children unless you value and train and mentor your staff. That's critical in any organization.
Because as you said, and you even put this to people on their first or second interviews, which, by the way, we still do, we tell them that they are walking, talking business cards for the organization. And we ask them, how do you go about making relationships in the schools? What does it look like? What does your interaction look like with the receptionist or with the custodial staff? What does your interaction look like when you're in the faculty lounge? That's important because the adults are the gatekeepers. And yes, we want to serve kids, that's our mission. Well, we can't get to the kids if the adults don't like us and if the adults don't let us in.
Right.
And the people who are doing the work, you always say the people who are doing the real work,
Mm-hmm.
and I find myself saying that now because the real work is happening in the classrooms,
Right.
and behind closed doors in the counseling sessions and out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a facilitator to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people who want to know, what are you doing during retirement? What are you doing?
Well, first I have to tell you, my heart is still with
Oh,
PrevenTable, or
duh.
whatever the name of the
whatever
place
the
is.
name is, NCADA. But you know what, Harriet? You can call us whatever you want. Your
Right.
heart is still here.
My heart is here. And
Because you were here for 36 years, is that correct?
33 and a half.
33. Okay, but who's counting?
But who's counting? Right. I had lucky to get a job with a lot of support that became a career with a lot of wonderful people. And I think once you have a job that you love, you never work a day in your life. And I really don't think I ever did. So in retirement, I just, because of COVID, I've not done as much, but I've done a lot of volunteer work, that tries to help different people with different causes and stuff like that.
ESL, right? That's one of the
That's
causes you're in.
pretty much my big one at the moment. English as a second language, volunteering, and helping refugees and stuff like that. That's my
Piano,
biggest. Well, that, yeah.
art, a little.
The interest, personal interest stuff.
Seeing
Yeah.
grandkids. People
Yes.
want to know. Our listeners are dying to know.
Oh, God, how boring.
What is? It's not boring. You're fascinating
Oh,
because
God,
you're
help
kind
me.
of a legend. Sorry, but
No,
it's
no.
true. And
I can't go
everybody
there.
who's listening to this right now is shaking their head going oh yeah,
No.
Harriet's a legend.
In her own mind, right?
So last thing that I'll ask you is, did you ever think that we would be serving on average 65,000 kids a year? That's on a typical year, 30 staff, just doing prevention education. Did you see that in your brain?
Not at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw how the programs impacted kids and changed them, then I began to see it. And then when I retired, we were close to that number.
Yeah, we were big.
Not probably exactly that number, but depending on the grants and how many kids we could serve, we were,
yeah.
very many kids. So that was good.
But you knew it. You kind of you saw the potential to get there.
Yes, I saw the potential.
Okay, look into your globe. What do you see now?
I think it's, with the agency,
Yeah.
with PrevenTable, I think it's only going to grow because the need is there.
Yep.
The staff is wonderful. They are
I
making
am partial,
impacts.
but yes.
You have, you've got evaluation, you have data, you have shown growth more research is coming out. You approach kids in a way that engages them rather than lecturing them or judging them, and you help them grow rather than whack-a-mole them.
Mm.
And that approach that you're doing is only going to grow it. That's what I think.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I still can't believe you said yes, but I'm so grateful that you did. You truly are one of my favorite people in the entire world.
Well,
And
right back at you.
I'm so happy to see you. If you liked this conversation, if you want more of these types of, I don't know, this was a feel-good episode if you ask me, but if you want more of this, please consider rating, reviewing, subscribing, wherever you get your podcasts, and find us. Thank you so much, Harriet.
Thank you, Nicole, for this and for everything you do.
Right back at you.
Thanks for joining us at The PrevenTable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at PreventEd.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The PrevenTable.